for you each and every afternoon as you make your way around the great state of South Carolina and beyond, listening to us on incredible radio stations like Fox Sports Radio 1400 the Midlands, around the world on the iHeartRadio app. Thank you for being a part of the program on a Friday afternoon. And since it is a Friday afternoon, you know what that means. Former Clemson head coach Tommy Bowden set to join the program here momentarily. Love catching up with Coach Bowden. Look at him right there. Sharp dresser, indeed he is. We'll get up with Coach Bowden here momentarily. Those of you streaming the show today, again, go hit the subscribe button on YouTube. And apparently there's been a change that now it's no longer on Periscope. It's just streaming through Twitter. I don't know how that'll look different for those of you on Twitter, but hey, good. Let's hope it still continues to work well. And really, last but not least on that front, anybody streaming the show, let me know about the audio. And I'm talking about the audio specifically. If you hear just a tinge of a pop or something that doesn't sound crisp, that's one thing I'm still trying to iron out. I haven't been able to figure it out before the show. And sometimes I think it's going to be great, and then it's not during the show. So again, just keep that in mind as we roll along here on a Friday afternoon ahead of Clemson heading up to NC State to take on the Wolfpack. And, of course, a guy that knows a lot about traveling around and spending time talking college football with us every Friday is Coach Tommy Bowden. Coach, appreciate you on a Friday. Sorry I didn't.
Can you hear me?
I got you. Sorry I didn't text you earlier. I try to do that, but, sometimes I get so caught up, man. I hope I'm not catching a bad time.
No, after about 6 or 7 years, you'd think I'd learn 3 o'clock Central Time on Friday. You're going to
call. Right. Well, look, first off, I know last week's game, Clemson Tiger fans and certainly the coaching staff thought would go a different way. But the word we kept hearing from Tony Elliott and Dabo Swinney was Georgia Tech showed some different structures that we had only seen on film from them one time against Central Florida a year ago. And I think from the layperson, I think from the casual observer of the sport in the stands, can't figure out how a Clemson team, can't dissect what's taking place with Georgia Tech's defense and be more efficient offensively. As a former coach, I mean, what are your thoughts on, the structure being the biggest issue that Clemson dealt with Saturday?
Well, to a certain extent, you run into that every Saturday. Every time you play, when they play NC State will have a new wrinkle that Clemson will not have seen previously. There might not be much of one, but it'll be a little of one. So every week there's some of that. Now, to what extent the Georgia Tech did it seems to be a little bit more major than a normal week to week when you transition from week to week as far as a new wrinkle. And that's where I think as a coaching staff, they say that the most critical adjustments are really not so much made at halftime. They're made between series. Why would you want to wait till halftime? You got a first quarter and a second quarter. You're probably going to have 6 or 7 series. So you'd like to see that you make adjustments between the second and third series once you determine or kind of decipher what they're doing. Now, a lot of that might be the retention of the offensive line if you're playing with some young guys and they can't make the adjustment. Even though you recognize as a staff, you go over it between series, they just don't have the experience to make the adjustments till later on in the game or maybe possibly the next weeks. But that does happen. But again, as a staff, you need to be a little more astute between series on making adjustments, not so much waiting until halftime.
Well, and that was the thing that I kind of asked Coach Swinney on, I guess, Sunday during his teleconference. When you get into that moment, like any tactician, you recognize, hey, this is completely different. And yeah, there's some young guys that are playing some different roles on this Clemson Tiger offense, but how is that communicated? So if I'm the head coach and I notice this and all of a sudden we come off with 3 and out, what do we do at that point, Coach, to communicate to the O-line, to the tight ends, to the running backs? I mean, how does that start to come together?
What should happen is Robbie Caldwell in the press box or on the sideline? On the
sidelines.
Okay, he's on the sideline. He's got an assistant up in the press box, and which should determine, say, Georgia Tech's been playing an odd front, a 50 front, or a 3-man front, whatever you want to call it. And it's right during the really in the game. The second play from line of scrimmage at Georgia Tech goes from an odd front to a 50 front to an even front. They kick down and cover the guards and tackles as opposed to the tackles in the center. That guy, the guy up top should say, "Hey, coach, they just jumped into an even front." They haven't shown that now. Gosh, it was last year. So be prepared. But they were in even. The next series, coach, they came out in even front on first down and third down. They were even front. So it should be communicated immediately. I mean, before the ball snap, you can sit there and see whether in the 3-man front or 4-man front. Or I call even or odd, depending on what kind of terminology you're used to using. But right. So it should be recognized immediately, even in the cover, even their coverages. Hey, coach, they're showing a 2 deep. They used to show us a 2 deep and play 2 deep. Now they're showing us a 2, and they're rolling the 3, or they're rolling the man free, or they're rolling the some other coverage. So does Tyler Grisham, is he in the press box or on the sideline?
I believe Tyler's on the sidelines. Yeah.
Sideline. Okay, but Tony Elliott, he's press box guy.
Yep.
He's in the press box.
Sir.
Well, he should say, okay, now Tyler, they're showing us 2, but they're not staying in 2. They're rolling the 3 or 1 coverage, man free. You can disguise 3 deep in a man free. They're kind of really hard to determine, but you can get to them both from a 2 deep look. So those things should be immediately, like for Tony Elliott tells Tyler Grisham, hey, when the ball snapped, they didn't stay in a 2 deep. So they ought to be, some of that communication goes on during the series, but when you're a play caller, you've got to have a little bit of information fed to you, but you kind of got to keep on schedule with your play call sheet and everything.
Former Clemson Tiger head coach Tommy Bowden. He's on Twitter at Tommy_Bowden. He's here every Friday afternoon to talk a little college football and give us an inside look at it all. And so from that standpoint, Coach, you bring up having to kind of go through that. I hear a lot of conversations from people about, well, when a team's giving you the type of looks that Georgia Tech was with 8 guys dropping and robber coverages and all kind of things, that Clemson still didn't test them down the field and even just throw the ball and hope to win a 50-50, something like that. Now, I mean, in your mind, do you still have to try the deep ball occasionally, even if it's on the outside shoulder of a wide receiver, just to maybe turn some of that? Or is everything got to be played sort of underneath in that mid-range running game and everything that you're trying to do?
Yeah, I used to try to have four deep balls planned the game, preferably 1 a quarter. And even if you don't complete it, it puts fear into the secondary. Just keep them away from man coverage. Where you get beat deep. It's a little bit easier to get beat deep in man than it is in some kind of zone where you can sit back a little bit. So I'm not sure. I think I saw a statistic today. Would Clemson be last in the ACC in yards per attempt?
I believe they are. They're close to the
5.6.
bottom in most offensive categories right now, surprisingly. Yeah. So yeah.
Now, so what you got to determine now, is it 5.6 because we're not taking shots downfield, or are receivers not breaking tackles, or they're not making people miss? Why is it 5.6? From what I have seen, they do not take a lot of shots downfield. I haven't seen every play of every snap, but you might have some better data on that. Whether how many shots per game are they taking over 30 yards, over 25 yards, or over 20?
It's a good point. They haven't taken too many. And part of that, I think, too, is DJ Uiagalelei. Look, I think there was probably a lot of hype heaped on him because of his performance at Notre Dame last season, where he played phenomenal. Just watching him, I'm no quarterbacks coach. I know you've been around a quarterback, quarterbacks much more than I have, but it feels like he's throwing off of his back leg a lot, not really stepping into his throws like you would probably want him to. I mean, does that come from, in your opinion, poor offensive line play? Is it just mechanics? And what can Clemson do and Brandon Streeter do to clean some of that up?
I would think he's a young guy. He hasn't played that much, especially in the heat of battle. He did perform well maybe 2 games last year, and even in the Notre Dame game played well. But he's a big, strong, physical guy. In high school, he could muscle a throw with all arms. His mechanics would have to be real good, if you can understand what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
He's so big and strong in high school, he could, and the coverage wouldn't be real tight. He could kind of float one out on his back foot in high school and still complete it and get it downfield pretty good off his back foot and still complete it. Whereas in college, you have to be a little more precise. There's a little more attention to detail. I know anytime you hear, I know Brandon Streeter knows this. If you've ever messed around with quarterbacks, a quarterback's execution starts from the ground up. It starts from the feet. And you'll see quarterback coaches doing a lot of footwork drills because that's where it starts. A lot of people think there's a bunch of things involved. It starts from the ground up. And if he's done that in high school for 3 years and had success, it's going to be, it's going to take a little while for him to get out of that habit. If that's what I think I saw some comments by Tony Elliott where he felt like some of the mechanics were just a little raw right now. And I think that would come mostly through inexperience and then a problem he has had in high school where he's just not been able to break it yet.
Now, also as a coach who coached Woodrow Dantzler, and you know how effective the feet of the quarterback can be. When we look at Clemson over the past, 3 or 4 quarterbacks, whether it's Trevor Lawrence, whether it's Kelly Bryant, whether it's Deshaun Watson, Taj Boyd, those quarterbacks were all willingly. Yeah, I felt like it was willingness that they had to rush the football. I kind of feel like DJ wants to be in the pocket. I feel like he doesn't really want to take what the defense might be giving him. I especially saw that against Georgia. Is that something that he's going to have to take on a little bit more of the brunt in this offense, in your opinion, to maybe get some of those other things working a little bit better as well?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's going to come down to Tony Elliott and Brandon Streeter on what exactly they want him to do. How soon, if the pocket collapses, how soon do they want him to step up and find the secondary guy, or to step up and make something happen with his feet? Now they're going to emphasize, Tony and Brandon are going to emphasize one over the other. One will be a priority, one will be secondary. They step up and find your secondary guy, step up and make something happen with your legs. I'm not sure what Brandon and Tony are emphasizing is the number one priority and number 2 priority, but that's something also comes with a lot of repetitions, a lot of working games where you know from a certain defense who drops, how far they drop, whether there's going to be a pocket for you to run or a pocket for you to hit a secondary receiver.
3:30 on ESPN. It'll be the Clemson Tigers on the road at NC State. And before the season, Coach, a lot of people thought that NC State might be the team. If there was a team that was going to upset Clemson, they thought it might be the Wolfpack. That seems a lot more likely than maybe people thought at the ACC kickoff when we were talking about over the summer. All that being said, I mean, if Clemson does lose, I think certainly their chances of a college football playoff hopes are in trouble. But it would be the first time in a long, long time that they've been behind anybody in the Atlantic Division. And I don't know what the fan base would be like on Monday when we come in here, if that's the case. But I got to imagine that for the coaching staff, that would also be something that's certainly unique to them at this point, given the success they've had.
Yeah, one thing about Dabo has been in big games before. Before he won big games, he had to prove that he could. But he's won plenty of big games, and he's been in games like this. He'll know how to respond and get the staff to respond. But like you just mentioned, there hadn't happened in several years with Clemson. So there is going to be an adjustment curve for a staff that's having some difficulty up front with the offensive line, and then a little more difficult criticism where you hear it from your wife at home or your kids hear it at school. That hadn't happened in a long time now. I don't think there's any doubt or reservation that Dabo will have a good plan from a staff standpoint, but still, it will have to be addressed, and it'll have to go way back in Dabo's files to find a situation like this, because he hadn't had one in a while where there's been a lot of criticism based on performance, especially offensively, because they've been so good offensively. Well, they've been good on both sides of the ball, but offensively, they haven't struggled like this in a while.
Just a few more minutes here with Tommy Bowden on a Friday afternoon. He's here every Friday at 4 o'clock. So the defense coach, for the first time in 71 years, has not given up a touchdown through 3 ball games, which is incredible. I mean, just how difficult is something like what Brent Venables' side of the football has been able to do?
What's the hardest thing about it is when you put in your second team. They don't get as much work as the first team. You're in practice Monday through Friday. Your first team gets, if you're going to go 10 plays or 10 script 10 your plays during a 1st and 10 period or a goal line or a third down, your first team defense is going to get 7 of those, and your second team's probably going to get 3 or 4. You're not going to give them equal reps. So what's been impressive is when he's putting down the line second team guys in, or injured guys have been injured, they don't miss a beat. And he's got that whole defense right now on the same page. And that's, to me, the amazing thing. Not so much that they've all been close games, but like South Carolina State, when you put your second team in and they don't give up points, I think that says a lot about that defensive staff and the message they're getting across to their top 22 and top 33 players.
So final thing for you, assuming that defense is as salty as they are to a degree at practice, is there any possibility, given what you know about how hard guys are going at practice, et cetera, that some of DJ's issues are simply things that are carrying over from facing off against this Clemson defense at practice? I have no idea. I'm not there. I don't know. I mean, is that a possibility at all?
Well, not really, because very little time is spent versus the first team defense. The first team defense is down there on the other side of the field, or under the whole field.
Good to know.
NC State's offense. So they're not going against each other. They're probably going against each other on a Thursday in a 2-minute drill. And I would usually have at least 10 minutes of good on good. You know, the best versus the best in a passing situation where you can pass, offensive linemen can get a full speed pass rush and you get full speed coverage, you know, from your secondary, and receivers can go against good. So they probably don't go against each other good. DJ probably does not go against his first team defense any more than maybe 15 minutes a day, and it's the most. So I don't think that would be a problem. In fact, still you just got to go against them.
Gotcha, because they've got the Clemson's offense going up against a group of players simulating what they'll see from NC State, et cetera.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
State. Biggest thing is the line of the front and blitzes and things like that. What's their short yards and goal line fronts? What's their blitz and what's their red zone coming off the goal line in the middle of the field? All those things, third and long. You got to practice against all those things you don't see versus NC State. And Brent Venables is a nice guy, but not nice enough to take his first team defense down and line up in NC State defenses all day.
Well,
go against their offense.
And so we only have a minute, but final thing on that. So who's typically the person that's instructing the defense? Just like a grad assistant on the defensive side of the ball? Who's kind of instructing those guys what to do?
Exactly. Yeah, you got your defensive graduate assistants. They'll probably be, I don't know, maybe I ain't 2 of them, but they'll go down there with the scout team defense. It'll be your third teamers, your red shirt, your third team defensive guys, and your red shirt guys. The GAs will take them down there. And before practice now, they'll go out on the field and they'll line up in NC State defenses, coverages, blitzes. You know, so when they get to the team period, you got to be able to get work real quick, and you can't be messing up. So, and you work with the guys who may be a little discouraged. You know, they got the chip on their shoulders. They didn't think they'd be redshirted or not playing. So they're not happy campers anyway when they go down there with those GAs who go against Clemson's offense. So it's a pretty big task for those defensive graduate assistants.
I love it, Coach. Thank you for the insight. We can't wait to talk to you next week, and have a great weekend. We'll talk to you on Friday.
Enjoy the game. Thank you.
Man, incredible insight from Tommy Bowden. We'll hit a break and react next.
Now, Columbia's most dependable traffic, sponsored by Pope Davis Tire and Automotive, home of the best tire prices in Columbia, guaranteed. Fox Sports Radio 1400 traffic.
A look at traffic shows a wreck on Blythewood Road at I-77. Also an accident on Caedmon's Walk at Poets Walk. The 103.5 FM WVOC traffic tip line is 343-1055.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's Foods.
We did it. The Buy Low at 120 Forum Drive is now a full-fledged brand spanking chicken clucking brisket rubbing veggie chopping draft pouring new Lowe's Foods. The grand opening of your local Lowe's Foods is here. Get excited.
iHeartRadio brings you Global Citizen Live, a moment heard around the world. Tomorrow, the biggest artists on the planet unite with world leaders to demand action on our biggest challenges. Featuring BTS, Usher, Elton John, Black Eyed Peas, Ed Sheeran, Lizzo, Shawn Mendes, Jennifer Lopez, Coldplay, and other surprise guests. Join us for this once-in-a-generation moment to defend the planet and defeat poverty. Together, we can move the world one action at a time. Hear it all day tomorrow on Global Citizen Radio with the iHeartRadio app.
Are you thinking about refinancing your home to get cash out for college, a renovation, or to pay off debt? The last thing you want to do is pay thousands of dollars in unnecessary closing costs just to access the equity in your home. After all, you have plans for that money. Cap your closing costs with Cap Center, your local South Carolina lender.